So, what do you know about genetic modification? Truth is that not much is commonly known about genetic modification, and this paucity of public literature has led to half-truths and innuendos. Some of these innuendos come in the form of conspiracy theories. Now, some of these theories are substantiated facts, others are merely flying on the wings of ignorance. You would think that this lack of information only affects the uneducated, but when it comes to GMOs, even highly educated people find themselves clutching on popular catchphrases, no matter how unexamined they are. This video now is a Boqer School presentation meant to augment all that you already know about genetic modification. So what is genetic modification? Genetic modification is a technique to change the characteristics of a plant, an animal, or a microorganism by transferring a piece of DNA from one organism to a different organism. And this is done through targeted removal of desired genes from the DNA of one organism and adding them to the DNA of another organism. So that brings us to the question, is GMO good or evil? Well, genetic modification is neither good nor evil. It wears the character of the person performing the genetic modification. And genetic modification is as old as Methuselah. Indeed, you can find genetic modification in the Bible. If you read Genesis chapter 30, verse 25 to 43, you will see an interesting account of Jacob and his father-in-law Laban, where Jacob used genetic modification to produce spotted and speckled sheep. And then if you now go further to read Genesis 31 verse 11, verse 4 to 11, you will see where Jacob was recalling that story, and he said that he had an angelic dream where he was given the technology to genetic modification in the dream of the night. So if genetic modification is divinely inspired to bring results to Jacob, that tells you that genetic modification can be good, but then it can also be evil depending on who is doing and what their purpose is. For instance, the Bible provides ethical considerations about genetic modification in Leviticus 19 verse 19. But you see, genetic modification has life applications. For instance, we have used genetic modification to edit unwanted traits, for instance, in sicknesses that run in family lines. People who have used genetic modification to edit it out of their bloodline. Alright, and many of the food you eat today have been genetically altered. Take for instance banana. I can bet you that none of you have eaten the banana in its original way, because all the banana you're eating today and plantain you're eating today are all seedless. And if you open the center of that banana, you will see black spots that looks like seed. Those seeds used to be pear-sized, alright? But through genetic modification, scientists were able to remove the seed. Why did they remove the seed? Because they found out that you can actually grow plantain, or you can actually grow banana through the suckers. So if you can grow it through the suckers and the seed does not allow you to enjoy the succulent fruits, then you can alter it. You see, part of what happened in Genesis chapter 3 is that there was a massive gene mutation as a result of the fall of man. God said, "Cursed be the earth for your sake." And immediately that curse was pronounced on the earth. There was massive gene mutation. Animals started misbehaving. Lions started being wild. Mosquitoes started being infectious. And so the things that used to cooperate with Adam no longer cooperate with him. Not only that, his crops are now producing thorns and thistles. Not only that, there were a lot of gene mutation as a result of that proclamation. But now Jesus has redeemed mankind and redeemed also nature. That means that God can, in his infinite mercies, begin to give man the ideas, give man the skills, give man the intellect, give man the wisdom to begin to alter those crops around him, to begin to alter the genes of things around him to look like Eden. So we can use genetic modification to bring about things. Many of the foods you eat today are all genetically modified foods. Both your carrots. Did you know that at some point in medieval Europe, the Catholic Church went to war against potato? What was the offense? Because according to them, potato did not grow originally in Europe. I think potato grew from South America. So when they brought potatoes from South America to Europe, it wasn't surviving. And so they mutated the potatoes to the point that they started surviving in Europe. And then the Catholic Church went against it. People mounted pulpits to preach that potatoes were not created by God, therefore it's a sin to eat potato. But I can tell you today that all the potatoes you are eating today, both sweet potato and then Irish potatoes, they are all genetically modified potatoes. These modifications sometimes happened 600 years ago, some 1,000 years ago, some 2,000 years ago, and they were all considered safe and healthy. The problem now is that there is no ethics in science again. And you now have left science and gene science in the hands of people who have dubious character and in the hands of people who have nefarious objectives. And today people are becoming increasingly aware of those WEF-inspired GMOs, of those Bill Gates-inspired GMOs. And so when you leave genetic modification in the hands of people who are unscrupulous, then they begin to produce results. The Bible says that the gift of the Lord maketh rich and addeth no sorrow. When you're beginning to eat things that are gene modified and you're beginning to see that it predisposes one to cancer and all of those other conditions, then it is not from the Lord. And that is why we must encourage Christians to say, look, this is inspired by God. It is God that supplies the farmer great wisdom. It is God that supplied Jacob the wisdom to use unspotted sheep, unspotted cattle to produce spotted and speckled one through gene editing. And today, gene editing happens in many ways. Even through the water you drink, your gene can be modified. Through the food you eat, your gene can be modified. And it has several use applications. The problem many of us have with GMOs is that we now have a huge mistrust in the hands of the people currently leading to these GMOs. I encourage Christian scientists, I encourage Christians to go into research, to find out how they can improve things around them, to find out how they can make their crops resistant to pests, to find out how they can improve yields without editing out life from the food we eat, which is actually what WEF and Bill Gates are doing. So how do you respond in the face of GMOs? I'll encourage you to plant your own vineyard. Today, there are many options available to you. If you just do a simple Google search, a simple YouTube search, you will learn how to grow your own vegetables in your balconies. You even learn how to grow tubers of yam in sacks. You can grow your own food because you are sure of what you're growing and you are sure of the chemical composition of what you're growing. Then communities can also begin to preserve seeds, preserve seedlings, especially seedlings of those crops that we know that are healthy. Communities, church organizations, individuals, clusters of individuals, town unions, traditional rulers can begin to preserve seeds, do annual seed preservation methods. More so, we encourage each and every one of us to take up leadership positions, mount your wing. If a lot of us are in our places of responsibility, then if we all take our duties seriously, then we could begin to push back against this trend of GMOs that we are seeing. GMO in itself is not bad. It is like money. It wears the character of whoever owns it. It is like metal. Metal in itself is not good or bad. You can use it to make good things. You can also use it to make bad things. This technology in itself is not bad. It's not evil, as many of you have come to believe. It is down that we know that if found in the hands of evil men, it will begin to produce sickness and death. This is Boqer School Roundup on GMOs. We have done an elaborate video where these things we have fleshed out in an hour, 23 minutes video. I invite you to take a watch of that video. Thank you so very much. My name is Chima Christian. Africa's morning is at hand.